I believe you are also taking real-time notes.
That is correct.
Very good. So when we're done with my slides, we'll go over and you'll be able to see Cliff taking notes. So, talking about our net control operators. Did a little digging into the background of some of our operators and our net, just a few facts to get us started. Our net control operator group is 10 folks. We have 3 special guest stars this evening. And I see he's not online, but you'll note that Robin Patty is our WinLink net manager. That is, I consider that a separate net from our group. Robin and I work together, but really the WinLink net is under his aegis. Our special guest stars this evening are He Who Knows All, KA4OTB, who is also our HF and Simplex alternate net control. Scott, who also knows all, is our EC. He's also technically the head of the net control group. And WB4RHQ, who is our NWS chat liaison. In addition to the 10 operators, our 3 special guest stars, I have 4 more potential net control operators. 2 are almost certain, 2 are pending. So there is good growth potential in our group. So, of those 10 ops and 3 extras, let's look at a few things I found out about our group. Our operators are well qualified. Of those, that group of 13, 6 are involved with multiple nets. The hospital net, M-tiers, other nets. 3 are currently or past have involvement with Mars. And this was interesting. 7 of the 13, 50%, over 50%, are either current or past ECs. We have a vice director of the Delta Division of the ARRL. 3 of our operators have CERT training, and we have 1 first responder who is actually is responded this evening. The reason I brought this up is it shows 2 things. Thing number 1 is it shows these are well-qualified net control operators. These are well-trained amateur radio personnel. They're also showing in other aspects of their life they're interested in emergency preparation. Those are 2 good things. Okay, I think that's you, Jeff, and not me.
Yeah, that's me. I'm sorry.
Got it. In addition, you notice that our group is very responsive. I posted the 2015 schedule to Dropbox in the beginning of December. In 1 month, 2/3 of the year was filled. People are very responsive. When substitutions need to be made or slots need to be filled, people are very, very responsive. Several people have will say, I'll take it, and I generally go first come, first serve. In addition, we have only 1 slot that is open for this year. It's August 24th. I believe Robin is going to be taking that. So well qualified and responsive. Let's just look at our net. I went back 1 year. I started to June the 9th, 2014 to July 27th of this year, which was last week's net. That's 60 nets. And did a little bit of looking into it. Our average roster length is 100. So we have 100 names. The maximum was 150, and that was a net that I called 2 years ago, which wouldn't have been in this group, but I just happened to remember it. Our net this evening had a roster total of 97. Our average check-ins over that is about 70. Our highest check-ins was March of this year at 84. Our lowest number was 50 in December of last year, which is understandable with the holidays. Now, there was a total of 9 in October of last year, but Robin was calling the net. It got suspended due to me calling a Skywarn net. Just to put it in perspective, our little group has numbers better check-in for what I was able to tell than the M-tiers net. I don't have full access to the MTIERS files, but of the 29 nets that I did crunch numbers for the MTIERS net, their average check-in is 6.7. We're doing pretty well. We have good participation. Now, what I was unable to do is, since I am not CC'd on the alternate totals, I don't have alternates with the average alternate check-in. I also do not have WinLink. WinLink is not shown as a separate item on our database, and to go through 60 documents on OpenOffice, no, not a good thing. So this gives you some kind of idea of our types of nets and the kind of nets. So with that, we've got an overview of our net and our operators. I'd like to deal on two things tonight. We have a soft topic. Number one is we have great talent and potential within our net control group. Are we fully utilizing it? So our topic is, how are we doing? This is just the opinion, how you as the operators feel about our net, how our nets are going, how they're scheduled, how the participation is, how our net control operators are. After we're done with this, I'd like to get everybody's input for a brainstorming session, ideas and how we can improve and train to be emergency net control operators, not just radio club, because we're not a radio club. Training with an idea toward being handling emergency traffic. Brian, Elizabeth, Jack, Scott, Jean, all of you have handled emergency traffic. So this is your opportunity to share with us newer ones. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I can turn it back over to you, Cliff, and let's get started on our topic. How are we doing? First person would like to take the floor.
Don't all rush in.
That's what I was going to say.
Hi, Laura. Well, this is Scott here. Well, you know, I think we're doing well, and I would say actually that I consider you the lead of the group, Laura. I'm in the EC position, and I'm rely on you to make sure this part gets taken care of, which you've done an excellent job of, and I do appreciate that. I think we're doing well. I think you know, one thing we haven't done in a while is had a training topic presented during a net in a while, which might be helpful. You know, sometimes it's a good or not good format to do it. As far as how to prepare for an honest to goodness emergency, that one's a hard one to do, in my opinion. I'm interested to get Brian's input here in a minute, but that's a hard one to do on a regular basis without, you know, something going on. You know, and fake scenarios and all are okay, but you know, they don't create any chaos and overload of activity. I think the best thing that our net ops can do is make sure they're volunteering to cover net control when we do have public service events like the Harpeth River Ride or things like that. You know, and even if it's not net control, then to take opportunity to serve at a rest stop, just get some actual experience actually, you know, handling traffic, real traffic. And then, you know, during our Skywarn nets, or if we, you know, did have any other nets, to make sure, you know, monitoring, be willing to step in and act as alternates and look for those opportunities. But as far as how to introduce more training in a regular net, you know, that's one I do think of quite often. And to come up with something worthwhile, it's just something I haven't been able to. I think there's value in our net. We get to know who people are. We get a little familiar with the procedures, and it does get everybody who's taking net control duty over mic fright, which is sort of funny that we as radio operators have that, but so many people. The reason we don't have, you know, 80 people volunteering to be net control operators is we have people out there who are afraid to talk on the mic, you know, in a control situation. So I'm interested to hear what some of the others have to say, but I think we're doing a good job. If there's some nugget out there that we can make it better, I'm all ears.
Okay, so right
Hey,
now, hold on just a sec. If I could just say, keep your training ideas and for a little while longer. That way we can get just general opinions first. Let's just get opinions of the net. So I think that was you, Jeff. If that was you, go ahead, or whoever's next.
that was me, Brian, W6PST. I kind of agree with what Scott was saying as he was talking. Actually, Laura, when you started, as you were talking, I started just sort of taking my own notes. And one of the things that I had written down was just a quick thought was, unless you have drills or other net activities, how are you going to train? How are you going to do that? Just like Scott had said. And one of the things we used to do was we found that we had to do it outside of net control, because a lot of people they either want to check in and then secure, or they check in once a week and check out and then they go about their way. But to keep people on a net, it's hard to do. So we would use our monthly meeting plus an activity day that I had started, and we would use those times to sort of train more people. And you have to have willing people like yourself, Laura, like Cliff, and like everyone on these nets that are willing to give up some of their time and have some of these people come over. I used to have people come over to the house all the time, and we would have net trainings. We would sit there, we'd go over topics, this and that. So the ones that are out there that are interested are absolutely the ones that you want to sort of take under your wing. And I think everyone that's on this GoToMeeting tonight feels the same way. So I think it is hard to do. I believe you all a couple years ago used to actually do that. I can recall one instance where I checked in via Echolink, and you all had about an hour of WinLink training, which was really awesome. It was great to hear, and I listened in for the whole thing. So that's really all I have to say about trying to get people more training on the nets. It's very hard to do in a net atmosphere. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
One thing that we do have, and Brian, you and I have talked about this, you and I and Cliff actually, is we have the Tuesday portable ops, and we've even talked about doing something on a Saturday. Getting people outside, getting portable, and just getting, like you said, getting on the air, getting familiar with your equipment, and just going for it.
And I think another problem there too, Laura, is a lot of people aren't as fortunate as us to be able to go out to the park on a Tuesday, or to meet each other and have a social every Tuesday. People have lives, they have children, they have responsibilities and obligations. So you do get that core group of people which are on the net tonight. But I think that's also hard to do too, to have people come out during a work day. It's not easy. That's the bottom line. Is it's not easy.
Yeah. Well, that's why we had talked about Saturday. So. Okay, additional comments?
This is Gene. Some of the things
Laura,
that we had.
this is Jack.
Go ahead, Gene.
Go ahead. Okay. One of the things that we used to do, and I guess I'm maybe jumping ahead where you said don't jump ahead, but something equivalent to a tabletop exercise, which I think is what you're talking about, where we actually do go out and deploy and maybe go to a few sites. When we did those in the past, we've included Red Cross and some of our served agencies where we've actually simulated a Red Cross shelter. It can all be done in one room, or within 2 or 3 facilities where you have people passing information that you would normally pass in an emergency. I think we're doing a great job on what we're doing, and I think what Scott was saying is absolutely true. It's just, unless there's an emergency, there's a lot of chaos that comes with an emergency. And one of the skills that we as communicators need to do is to literally learn how to manage what we have to do, our communications in that kind of chaotic environment. And so unless you actually have an emergency going on, which is not necessarily the right place, although it can be, to learn how to do your job, a tabletop is one alternative.
Very good. We had something sort of like that at this last Harpeth with the inserts. It was simulating the aftermath of a tornado. We had via WinLink, HF WinLink. We had over UHF, VHF phone, and simplex. That again, I am jumping ahead after going through all of saying doing that, but that's a possibility. Thank you. Additional comments along this line?
Lars, Jeff, I think we are doing about the best we can do on the Monday night nets, given the number of people that check in and the amount of time. I mean, the only other thing we could do is go take check-ins by call sign, and with the volume of calls we have, that would take all night. So I think as far as Monday night nets are going, I think we are doing about the best we can. If we get back to throwing in some of the training like we've done in the past, that would be advantageous also. One thing that I think we need to do during weather nets, instead of running, I know we've changed everything, but I think instead of running the nets the way we run them, it would help the net control operator, which is usually you, if we did take check-ins. And that way the people would get used to having to check in, and the net control operator would learn to take control of the net and how to better drive getting just the minimum required information during a weather net.
Okay. Hold that thought, and I want to bring in Jack and Scott. I was listening. I wasn't relicensed in 2011, but I know Jack and Scott were on the net during that tornado outbreak in 2011. Jack, if you could tell a little bit about the idea of removing the check-ins during a severe weather net.
Okay.
Just the idea of point counterpoint. That's all. No, I'm not attacking you, Jeff. Just point counterpoint.
As some of the older members of the net are aware, we did at one point in time take the check-ins. Two things came into being on that. If you didn't on a regular basis every hour go back in at the top of the hour and recheck who all was on the net, you would lose track of your net check-ins. Also, if people were out moving in a mobile, if you checked them in Fairview, but they're driving around and an hour later they're over in College Grove, when you needed a Fairview report, that wasn't necessarily, you didn't have somebody over there then. So the thought process of going to no check-in, and Jeff's right in saying that if you have check-ins, that lets the net control operator control the net. But the reason that we drifted away from that was just the sheer numbers. We would have 50 or 60 check-ins on a weather net.
That is true. Yeah.
30 minutes later, you might they've gone to watch TV or they've lost power at the house or any number of other things. So there's pluses to both ways and minuses to both ways, and we tried it one direction. We thought we had a better handle on what was happening by not taking the check-ins, and unless it was a specific item requested by the National Weather Service. And we've all been there to, you can preach to the cows come home, and somebody's going to say, well, it's raining cats and dogs over here in Timbuktu, and that's that's not what we want. And we can say it as much as we want what the required items are. People talks about having mic flight, but we got the other side that people have got to commit about anything. They can't have the radio there without talking on it. Go ahead, Scott, your turn.
We instituted the no check-in net after about the time I took over net control. and the reason being that the check-in works great. Like back home in McMinn County when there might have been maybe on a good day 30 of us in the county. It worked okay, but we've got nearly 200 people on our rolls, and even though most of them don't make our regular check-ins or chew and chat or any of our activities, if we have severe weather, they all show up. And I found that at the beginning of net, it was almost impossible as net control to first get an idea of what was going on, and to get the lay of the land, to get the liaison established, because all you were doing was taking check-ins, just check in, and if you were trying to check in, you were caught in a backlog behind 5 or 6 people. So what if you were the guy who actually saw the rotating funnel cloud getting ready to start throwing debris, and you couldn't get in to make the report because of a check-in? And that was why I wanted to do away with the check-ins. It's a given people are there. Now, I'm all for finding a way off frequency or on another frequency to handle a check-in or just know who's there for sure. But the main reason for having the net is for me to be able to first give information that we're receiving through the liaison to the NWS or the MTIRs out to the net, but then also for the operators on the net to be able to send items that meet the reporting criteria in. And if that report of that item is backed up in a backlog of people trying to check in just to say they're there, I don't think that meets our mission. So that was the reason for that.
Okay. Let me just throw in one thing here. The last Skywarn net was in late July, and there had been reports that there was a wall cloud in the Cool Springs area. People were seeing funnel clouds. There were no funnel clouds. It was almost certainly scud, but there was almost certainly at least a wall cloud. So I made a very careful wording request over the air. Does anybody have any reportable criteria for the Cool Springs area? Is there any weather phenomena? Is there anything unusual going on? And there were no takers. I found that most of the problem is, I don't know whether we're training them to stay off if they don't have anything to say, but we're not getting any response at all. During that last Skywarn net, there were 2 people that checked in, 2. Both of them, I think Brian, you may have been one of them, and the other one was Edwin Gay, and that's it. So I'm seeing we're having the other problem of people going to Nashville Severe WX Twitter, which is what I look at. I'm looking at that too while I'm in chat. But we need people to, it's sort of a hard thing to do. We need to keep them on the air, but we need to find a way for them to filter out the extraneous reports. So I just tossed that in for what it's worth.
Laura, I have an idea that I could propose.
Go ahead.
The Weather Service provides both a watch and a warning. The watch obviously comes beforehand. When we lived in a different state, one of the things that we used to do is if a watch was issued, and this all depended on what the circumstances were, what kind of event it was, we would take advantage of the watch period to take check-ins, because at that point it was non-emergent. There was airspace in order to do the check-ins, and when the check-ins were taken, the check-ins, because the area that it was in had many zip codes associated with it. Now, being in Williamson County, there's quite a few zip codes, but not as many as there were where we used to live. The check-in process could incorporate, during the watch period, the call sign, the person's location, and that could be determined based on zip code or subdivision or some sort of identifier that identifies where they are on the map within Williamson County. And then as soon as a warning is issued, all traffic ceases and only reports are either called in, or since net control will have a check-in roster of where people are. Let me use the example that you just did about Cool Springs and the possible wall cloud, or what is it that they're seeing. Let's say you had a station that checked in during check-in, identify themselves as being in the Cool Springs area. That's where they happen to live. So-and-so, can you please provide a report based on your location? And so you can actually reach out proactively to that station, knowing where they're located, because there was a check-in period before things hit the fan. And then you open it also up to those who have not had a chance to check in during the watches. They can also add additional information for those who haven't had a chance to check in. So you could take advantage of the watch versus warning period to kind of set that up in advance.
Dr. Elizabeth, that is an excellent suggestion, because during a watch period, everybody is aware, but there's no urgency. Jeff, what do you think of that idea?
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea, and I'm not opposed to, like Jack and Scott were saying. I don't think it needs to be done at the start of an emergency activation, just to get the names on the roster, because, like I said, that is blocking emergency communications coming through. But at some times, I think we do need to get a check-in, and this would be a good time to do it. Would be during the watch. So I do agree with that.
Okay, so what I will do then is I will amend. I have a script for Skywarn Net. I will amend that when I make an announcement. I generally will make an announcement if there is a severe thunderstorm watch, definitely if there's a tornado watch, and just request check-ins. And if it goes to a warned storm in the county and we bring up to full activation, I could say at this time we're only checking in people with emergency traffic, reportable criteria. Is that the way you understood it, Elizabeth?
Yes, that is. That's a very good example of it. Again, it just depends on what the circumstances are. Sometimes Weather Service gives us a really, really long watch period. You don't have to take the call, check-in that early in advance. But if you have a system that's approaching and it's, let's say it's coming from the west and it's in Hickman County, you probably want to be taking your check-ins as it's going through Hickman County. And as soon as it either hits Williamson or the Weather Service issues the warning, then you want to clear traffic and only allow emergent traffic to come through.
Okay, then Scott, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to amend my my script to look for check-ins for severe thunderstorm and tornado watches. I'll just listen for check-ins or actively call for check-ins at that time. Is that acceptable?
Okay, I just want to make sure. So you're saying initiate a check-in on a watch?
Yes, before any negative weather event has occurred.
Well, I wouldn't say you have a check-in or you even necessarily have a net if you have a watch, because there's many days here where we may be under a tornado watch all day long. The conditions may be correct, but we might not even have a thunderstorm, in some of them. So I don't know that I'd trigger it necessarily on the watch being issued. I would think I would leave it, say, a watch issued, and at the discretion of net control or there again, if we've got severe thunderstorms going on presently and a tornado watch is present, then I'd say sure. But if you know what I'm saying, does that make sense? I don't know that I would have everybody standing by for an event of gray skies and it's humid out. Whereas does that make sense?
Yes, and so I will amend that if there's two clouds in the sky bumping, I'm looking at radar, and so is Ed. Ed and I often go back and forth on chat. So we're watching radar. If like Elizabeth said, if there is something in Hickman County, it's coming toward Fairview. If it looks like it's been warned or the storm is increasing in intensity, that might be the time we're under a watch. The weather seems to be intensifying, though it is not yet warned, nor is it in the county. Or is there anyone standing by in case we need to go to full activation?
Okay. If you're net control operator, and let's say we have a good day and half our membership shows up on the net, and you have 100 people check in, so the net control operator is going to be able to take check-ins and note location while at the same time keeping an eye on reports from the liaison, watching chat themselves, and watching the radar of choice.
If that's the case, then this would be a situation for, use the example of me, because I'm generally the one during the week that's running the Skywarn net. I would say if W6PST is available, Brian, will you get on the Cool Springs 7-9er repeater, take check-ins, and monitor that? And Brian or whomever, Elizabeth for that matter, could get back to me. We've got such and such check-ins, and keep the watch period. Just keep the MTIR system, or excuse me, the WCARES system open until there's emergency traffic. So do you agree with that? Check in another repeater and have another net control as a relay to the primary NC.
This is W6PST, Brian. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and it allows for a little bit more flexibility and for people to be able to find. Not everyone checks in on WCARES, or not everyone knows about those frequencies. But certainly, if there's a hand that stumbles across it, I think it's it can't hurt to be doubly protected. So I think that's a great idea, and I'd be happy to do that. Or if Elizabeth is there, then I can acquiesce, whatever, or she can pick it up. But I think that's a great idea.
Very good. Ed, do you have any comments? I think we've lost Ed. I will turn it over to Daryl. Daryl, do you have any comments? Daryl or RJ?
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. No, I don't. I really don't have any comments at this time. I feel like I'm a midget among giants.
Not even close, buddy. RJ, do you have any comments?
Well, not really on this one. It's going to be a different situation every time, but I kind of like the idea that we came up with on when there's a watch issued. Yeah, let's start the net. Let's take check-ins, and if it goes into a warning, then we'll proceed from there. And if the watch goes away, drop the net, and everything's back to normal.
Very good. Interesting thing that the National Weather Service just said that July had the most tornadoes since they started recording them since 1916. We've been very fortunate in Williamson County. Our severe weather is going up north, diverting up north toward the Kentucky border, or down toward, like Lawrence County is not a good place to be, toward the Alabama border. But it's interesting, the Wilson County tornadoes that happened, they had a small tornado in Davison County. None of those storms came out of a tornado watch. They were all severe thunderstorm warned storms, and they had spin-ups. So just because we don't have a tornado warning doesn't mean it can happen. And we are in the Dixie, what they call Dixie Alley. This is one of the most tornado-prone parts of the country, so it's good that we're discussing this. It's not just because I'm a weather freak. It's more likely Other than an earthquake, this will be our primary emergency, so all of us know how to handle it. If I'm not available, one of you will have to handle it. And hearing this, all of us will know how to do it. I mean, not just Brian or Elizabeth or Ed or Jack that have experience, but whoever is out there, if you know how to handle Lynette and you see a need, get it going. Okay, is there anybody else? Go ahead.
Laura, this is Ed. I had to change mics.
Okay, go ahead, please, Ed.
What Elizabeth is saying is how we handle nets in all other parts of the country.
Okay.
And also, like Scott says, you don't do it the minute a watch is issued. You got to use a little common sense and watch the radar depending upon what the situation is. But in addition to taking check-ins, you really need to get where they are, whether they're mobile, whether they're fixed, and a commitment that they're going to be there. And if they're going to leave for any reason, they need to come back and let you know. Because getting 50 check-ins and then 40 of them go away to eat dinner doesn't do you a bit of good.
Okay, very good. Very good.
A question.
Go ahead.
Laura, I was just wondering how many of the net control operators that are on here tonight have access to OHX chat, and if they do they use it on a regular basis? I know I try to log in when I can.
Okay, I know I do, Ed, Elizabeth, Robin, Patty, Trey, who is not here tonight, does. Elizabeth, of course. Scott.
Jack does and Scott does.
Yes. So.
Okay, I think that would be a good idea if anybody is going to be a net control operator, that they have access to that and then learn how to use that, because that's an invaluable tool for our nets.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. To the point that with the on the occasion where chat goes down, nobody knows what to do.
Right.
Which is good and bad. Okay.
Does anybody on this call not have access to chat?
I don't think I do. This is RJ.
And Daryl, I don't believe you do either.
This is Gene. I used to. I'm not sure if I still have it.
Yeah, Laura, you are correct. This is Daryl. I do not.
Well, I believe Mr. Scott is the person who will speak to.
I'm sorry. Let me mute it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Additional.
Yeah. You send to get access. You send a request through the NWS site, and then they'll assuming everything is still the same since Mr. Johnstone's on, then I'll get an email from them asking, probably through Tom Delker, if you're someone I want to have access to it. So that's how you get access. They don't want everybody having it unless they are part of net control or someone who is in a leadership position, because as some of you on there now know, there's already some issues with crashing from time to time just from the load. But yeah, if you're in our net control group, I want you to have it. So just submit the request. When I get it, I'll approve it.
Okay. Okay.
More importantly,
W6PST comment.
Folks that will. More importantly, it will be folks that have the responsibility of acting as a liaison, which not all events will necessitate having a liaison to the Weather Service, but definitely those who need to report, provide those reports that are incoming to the Weather Service.
Okay. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, just on a quick, nothing to do with the nets we were talking about, but I was curious tonight. It seemed like I was called rather fairly quickly. Did you do something different with the roster, or it used to be I wouldn't get called for 30 minutes. I was just curious if we switched something up.
We did. We went about 2 months ago. We went back to random sort, and the reason.
Oh, okay, very good.
We had it in alphabetic order to test another thing that is in holding. So I asked Scott if we could go back to random sort. It sort of forces people to pay attention to the net. They would blank out until 20 minutes after when they knew their call sign was coming up, but not really be involved in the net. So with flexibility of you never know when you're going to be called. So that's what it is. We're being sneaky.
Okay. Also, just curious, Scott. I mean, have you all ever had a? Not that you need to. I think we did. It was so large, and you also have a large check-in. Have you ever considered, or have you ever tried just open call? I mean, you could do it by area. You could do it by a number of different things, and then no one would have to necessarily download any spreadsheet. I mean, you're giving numbers to Scott and David. They're getting the numbers, but they're not actually. I guess you're saving the sheets. But I was just curious if you all had ever tried just open call either by location or just all in.
If that's been done, that predates me. Jack might be able to give a little more background on that, but no, we don't do an open call because again, we try to keep a little bit of control over it. And I don't know if you've noticed, but if you don't check in a month, your name's pulled out of the called roster. So we try to first of all call the folks that we have a reasonable reason to believe they're going to be out there to be called, and then we make it open. Basically we call the late calls, and then we make a call for whoever else might want to check in. But the reason it's done is again just to kind of keep a handle on the numbers. Just to try to keep some of the load off of the net control operator. That way you don't literally have 80 people keying up the microphone at the exact same moment to check in. So that's what we're trying to avoid.
Hey, Brian, I've got whole net rosters. We did an open call, and I think we had 8 or 9 people in the late 90s, 98 or 99. So we did open calls at one time, but we were a smaller group then also. Over.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just thought maybe sometimes. I mean, we had a fairly large check-in too, and not to take away anything. I love the way you guys do things, and I think our nets are great. And but it was nice tonight to hear my call sign called earlier on and not in an alphabetical listing, because I think people get complacent and they kind of get lackadaisical because they know their call sign is going to come up after KQ, 1Q, or whatever. So I think that was pretty neat to hear that tonight. So that's all.
Yeah. Now we have talked.
Thank you. Yeah.
I was just going to say we have talked a little bit about changing it up, keeping the roster, but playing around a little bit with the late check-ins. Cliff did it about 4 or 5 months ago. Instead of checking in by repeater, he just, do you remember that, Cliff? Checked in just by groups, just whoever's there. You took them in 2 at a time. Do you recall?
I do, because I noticed that when we did the calls by repeater, except for the Brentwood repeater, we only had 3 or 4 people checking in on the other repeaters, so it just seemed like we could kind of skip that step, and I think it saved us, a few minutes, but it wasn't terribly significant, but it might be helpful to do that sometimes.
Yeah. One other thing I had thought of, and I've gone back and forth about it, is sort of what we do or what Jack does on the HF nets, call by locations. Are you east of 65? Are you west of 65? Are you north of 40? Are you around Moore's Lane? Just have it like that and mix it up a little bit. Just to keep people on their toes. 'Cause like I said, you do get complacent. I know where I'm going to be, whereas random sort takes that out of the equation. You never know what you're going to be, so you pay attention to the whole net. Plus, with an open call, the advantage is if you're good, you know how to space it out so you're not doubling so much. That was one of the problems we had this evening. I had trouble hearing people that were low audio, just above the noise floor, at least on my end, and they were doubling with each other, which makes it difficult. The net was 36 minutes tonight. It should have been 30 It could have been 30 easily, but that was because of low audio and people stumbling over each other. So for what it's worth, there it is. Any further comments? Any topic?
How about a training comment?
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Thanks. You had mentioned that tonight's net was about 36 minutes, and one of the goals and objectives that's mentioned in the announcement at the very front end is the purposes of training. Perhaps as long as the roster is, and because sometimes it can take up to an hour to run the net, perhaps we can add a 10 to 15 minute training at the front end, just after announcement and before the roster is called, to do a training, and then go right into the roster calling. And that can be done on a monthly basis, not necessarily every net, but perhaps a 10, 15-minute training topic. That could be ICS, it could be CERT, it could be fire department, it could be police department, it could be Red Cross, you name it, at the front end, right before the roster is called, and that would fulfill one of our goals and objectives.
And that's what Brian was talking about earlier. We was talking about the WinLink presentation. I believe Phil has done that in several occasions. Scott, you've given training talks as well. That's not a bad idea. One thing it might not be a bad thing to talk about is how do you act during a directed net? Because there are people that are checking in that are ignoring the fact they're supposed to go through net control, and they're just saying, I got to secure. Can I check in now? Or I want to, do a late check-in or early check-in, whatever. So it might be a good idea. Exactly what is a directed net?
You had mentioned Phil's presentation. From what I recall, Phil's presentation actually took up the entire net, and there wasn't an opportunity to do any check-ins. I was thinking of shorter segments, which would facilitate both the training opportunity and the check-in. But that, depends on what the trainer has available. But that might be a snippet. People can walk away monthly with a pearl during the monthly net. And also, as far as the training is concerned, we used to do a lot more training opportunities versus out in the field. We do the bike races, and we do comms for those, but we used to also do exercises with served agencies, and we haven't done those, so we haven't been invited to any of those lately. Perhaps that might be an opportunity that we can look into, replugging into the served agencies and see how they might incorporate this group into their training opportunities that they hold.
Okay.
That's all I've got.
Okay, very good. 10 to 15 minutes before we get into the net. Additional comments about any topic?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, RJ.
RJ's. I got one. I know in the past we've done the workshops at the Ag Center over here. I think if we did one of those and advertised it real well in our email letters and on the net, that maybe we could get more people to show up to one of those and get ideas from them as to what they would like to be trained on. There's a lot of new hams out here. A couple of them I've met at church that actually saw my license plate in the parking lot and asked questions, and now he's checking in on the net. There's a lot of new hams that I guess they don't even know what to ask for.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I was going to say I really that's a great idea, and so was Elizabeth's idea. What I actually tried that, and what I found was, for some reason, it worked better, and our net morale was better if I actually held a post-net roundtable. So after we had the whole ARES thing, we would do a sort of a post-net roundtable where we talked about anything from FL Digi to WinLink to Ubiquity sort of mesh stuff. So I think Elizabeth absolutely has the right idea. I don't know about making people listen to it. We had some complaints, but we found when we switched up to an afternet sort of more casual training session that we had more people and other people tuning in from other areas of Los Angeles who then actually would come out and join Aries. So just a thought, but I think RJ's idea and Elizabeth is absolutely on the right path, and I think that would be a good thing.
Along that line, there are some people like myself that can't, because of our schedule, we can't make it out to the Chew and Chat. Is there a way for some of those issues to be broken down to 10 to 15 minutes and done either at the beginning or as a post-net chat? Anybody?
You know, actually, I think that's the way to go, Laura. I apologize. I forgot all about the M tiers, all of that. A lot of people are obligated; they're committed to other nets. So I think rethinking the whole thing, Elizabeth is right there. She's right there.
Well, and I also have to say on that particular question, Laura, I don't think many of the topics that we present at Chew and Chat, in the technical presentation beginning, I don't recall any in the recent past that would even be suitable for net presentation. I mean, they've all been pretty visual and pretty, presentation related. I don't know how you present those and make them worthwhile in an audio only format. It'd be like, I'm holding a calculator in my hand here that you've never seen. Let me describe it to you. It's gray and it has buttons on the screen that does these things. I don't know how you would do that.
Okay. I just tossed that out there. I didn't know. It's been a while. Like I said, it's been over a year since Joe and I have been to the Chew and Chats, and increasingly they are a really great learning resource. But if you can't get there, I was just wondering if there was some way that they could be broken down. But if they can't, they can't.
Yeah, I mean, now that we could do kind of what Phil had done in his initial WinLink training was we made available documents. We could do make a video available or whatever. But that's going to require the discipline of folks first, reading the newsletters when they do go out, which just so you know, we only have about a 40 to 50% even open rate on our email that goes out. And then that would actually have to cause people to actually download whatever we wanted, actually read it, actually have it ready for the net. And some people will do that, but I'm not to be a cynic, but the majority of the people attending the net would not.
Okay.
Well, Gene.
Go ahead, Gene.
Are not the presentations that are made at Chew and Chat put up on the website?
Daryl, I believe they are, aren't they?
Some of them are.
No, actually.
In general,
I'm sorry. This is Cliff. I would say that a lot of them are not. A lot of the ones haven't been recorded. And I speak for myself. A lot of the things that I've done, I've made videos and things like that, but I haven't even given it to anybody. So there's a lot of stuff like that hasn't made it to our website. And I think a lot of those things that are being done in the technical group, it's really more, it's more like digital communications and, things that are sort of on the fringe of what WCARES is about. I think it's more kind of elevating people and encouraging people to kind of branch out and try some new things or learn some new things, but it's not necessarily in our core function.
Understood.
This is Elizabeth.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I would be willing to do a 10-minute tutorial on how to apply for a amateur radio license plate with the county.
And I know that there would be people that would love you for doing that. New hams, that's a big thing. Could you work up something?
I could, but the point I'm making is we could do training that focuses not only on the simple, what we consider the simple stuff, but also the technical stuff. There's such a wide gamut of information, and I think the point of it all is we are communicators, and we all share communications in different mediums, and part of it is the newsletter, some of it is the net, some of it is the chat, and I think we just have various ways that we can communicate those training topics, and so incorporating it into a net where you have an audience of 70 people waiting to check in, that's 70 people that will get a 10-minute training bit. So it could be as simple as how to apply for car tags that are amateur radio license, all the way to something digital. So it fills in perhaps something that people are looking for.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay, Laura?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Laura, this is it. Go ahead, Jeff, and then I'll get it.
Okay. I was just going to say, and I know there's, I guess, several of us that were around back then when the county was more than willing to come out, and at the time we were new to WinLink, so they were doing WinLink training with us on a monthly basis. One month we had it here at the fire station. I can't remember where else we did, but we'd go out, pull their trailer out, set up in a parking lot, put the antennas up, and send out WinLink messages just to get people used to that type of training in the field. And I know good and well that the county would be willing to do that. And now that there's some of us, I think, that are going to be authorized to pull the county vehicles, we could probably do it on our own without having to tie up Bill or Butch or something like that. I think we could do that and make that available.
Okay, very good. What do you think, Scott?
I think that sounds okay. Yeah, I'm all for it. Whatever people will come to and get benefit from. I don't know that, I personally can be at everything. As Brian mentioned, I'm one of those poor saps that actually has to work 5 days of the week and essentially end up with a Saturday for everything else he has to get done with family and home and all that stuff. So I may not be able to be at all of them, but I'm all for it.
Okay, very good.
Laura?
Okay. That was one of your best moments, Cliff. Go ahead, Ed.
I hate to be the curmudgeon, but what needs to happen if you're going to have a training session in the net is a very short synopsis of net control procedures and how people are to behave. And then when we've had a weather net, the next Monday night net could be a quick recap of what we did and why we did it then. Yeah, people need to know how to get license plates, but if they can't figure that out, God help them, They need to know how they're expected to behave during an event. And unless somebody tells them what we expect of them, they're not going to get it. And in my opinion, it needs to be drilled in as many times as possible.
Okay.
That's my unsolicited, unprofessional opinion, as Jiro used to say.
Very good. It is 4 minutes past the hour, so we're going to wrap it up here. Does anyone have any concluding comments?
This is
Or
Gene.
even any topics for the next time?
Gene had a comment.
Go ahead, Gene, please.
I was going to say that, there's just like the overall field of amateur radio, there's people that are into it for different things, and I don't want to isolate or alienate anybody. You might want to sit down, or we might want to sit down and think about the different audiences that we're trying to address with the training. I mean, there's some training for on the net, like Ed was just saying, on what to expect from net, what to expect in an emergency situation as being a communicator. There are some people into it that want to learn some of the things that are going on in Chew and Chat not everybody wants to know what's going on, what that is. I think we need to be very careful that when we come up with different ideas about training, that we make sure that we're designing that training for the appropriate audience. That's all.
Very good.
Laura, final comment.
Go ahead, Ed.
Bear in mind, this is an Aries group. It's not a club. The Chew and Chat can be for the club functions, all the new whiz-bang toys. Training on the net needs to be Aries training, period. I hush.
Is there a final comment before we wrap up? Is there anything that we need to address in future if we have other meetings, or anything that can be dealt with just via email?
This is Daryl.
Go ahead, Daryl.
Well, one thing that I think needs to be addressed is the fact that each of us has priorities for our lives, and if there is some kind of an event, it would be nice to know which of us would be free. I know that if there was some kind of an emergency or something like that, I may not be available for various reasons. So it might be good to know who is most likely to be available when.
This is Elizabeth, and I'd like to piggyback on what Daryl just said. In addition to email addresses that were shared as part of the group in setting up this meeting, would it be possible to have a roster set up so that we have, in addition to email addresses, cell phone numbers, texting specifically, because obviously in an emergent situation, text messages seem to be a little bit more reliable than phone. We can set up a group text that can communicate within each other on availability.
I have no objection to that. Myself and Cliff, Jeff, and Robin have something similar to that. Sometimes we'll text each other with business that needs to be kept off the net, off air, I should say, but does directly affect the net. So I myself have no objection to sharing my phone number with other net control operators.
One idea, Laura.
Go ahead.
What if we explored what other Aries groups are doing around the country? I know, like, for instance, the Williamson County, Texas Aries group, they're a very active group. What if we found some of these groups and asked them what they do for training? Maybe we get some new fresh ideas.
Some of that we can do right now just going in the internet and looking for, and preparing for this meeting, I Googled net control meeting, and you will find a number of things. One thing that I learned is using a roster that, like we have, actually calling a roster is pretty unique among net control groups. They generally do open call, or like they do in M-tiers, it's open call, but if you've checked in previously, your name is on a roster. So yeah, there's all kinds of it. But that was one thing at the Ag Center. We had people from Murray County, from Hickman County coming in and asking us questions. I know from my little weather section, a lot of people were coming through and saying, well, this is how we do it in Murray County. This is how. So it may be worth exploring. Final comments?
Well, as I say, I was going to kind of agree with Ed. You know, we are an Aries group, so you know, our net training, we should try to find an emergency focus on it. You know, I would argue that a lot of the things that we have been presenting at Chew and Chat actually do have you know, use in some of the areas. It'll take more adoption in our group to make them worthwhile. Like, for instance, you know, if everybody already in the group had a system fusion radio, there wouldn't be any need to check in because you know where everybody is already, and even if they're mobile or moving around. So some of the items do apply. Even the trackers we made for Harpeth River Ride, though not necessarily emergency stuff, but those did have public safety applications, making sure we knew where riders were, when we could close rest stops, etc. But we do need to remember we are a club. There's nothing wrong with being social, but our focus is to be on applying our hobby to emergency preparedness. So just as long as anything we do has that bend to it, that's what I'm looking for.
Very good.
And I appreciate everybody showing up tonight.
Yes, and thank you. And Scott, you're going to be the last word. Thank you to everyone, especially you more experienced people like Scott and Ed, Jean, Elizabeth, Brian, sharing for us less experienced ones. We went a little over this evening. I apologize for that. But we are a good Aries group. We have good focus. And this is not a selfish group. Everybody is willing to share. There are no dumb questions, and everybody here is willing to offer a hand. So thank you to everyone. Again, thank you to Cliff for taking what we would call Cliff Notes.
Nice.
Tonight's Cliff Notes, and you are, I guess you are the taker of the minutes for the meeting. So with that, unless there's any further comments, we will call the meeting closed at 12 minutes past the hour.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. See you tomorrow.
Good night, Laura.
Good night, Elizabeth.